Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Agile 20 Reflect Festival. For the sake of new people, I would like to say something more about the Agile 20 Reflect Festival. It's a festival that aims at bridging and capturing the Agile, building and capturing bridges in the various Agile communities across the globe in a huge community lead event for the month of February to coincide with the 20 years of the Agile Manifesto. And today we have here a very special woman who is known as Evelien Roos. I hope I'm right.
Yeah.
Evelien Roos, yeah. She's an experienced Agile coach and a professional Scrum trainer at scrum.org. So I'm very positive whatever she's about to deliver is the best for us. And she has also helped many teams at different organizations to become more agile. And some of these organizations are VodafoneZiggo, Philips, APG, Rabobank, ING, etc. She also loves starting up new teams and to support teams to become high performing. Evelien will be speaking on the topic 5 ways to boost your Scrum. And hello, guys, if you have any questions or any contributions, you can unmute yourself and ask or contribute, but that will be done after her talk. So without much further ado, let's welcome Evelien.
Great. So thank you for that introduction, Annabelle. And welcome everybody to this talk. I see someone has found the menti.com already, but we have few participants. So we can just, if we want, use the Zoom functionality and just talk about it. So can anybody share something that you can do to totally mess up your Scrum? So you can unmute yourself, or I can unmute you. Anybody has an idea? So in the Mentimeter, I already see not practicing time boxing. So whose remark was that?
That was mine, Rachel.
Great. And can you share something about that, Rachel?
Okay, so I personally think that if you extend your time boxing, the 15 minutes of daily stand-up, it actually messes up the practice of Scrum.
Yes. Very well. Thank you. So you kind of lose track of the time box and the structure. So that could totally mess up your Scrum indeed. So any other ideas from the participants that you want to share? And I'm just checking with the panelists. Do we have a waiting room, or is everybody in now? So we can start.
You can start, please.
Great. Okay. So I'm not going to share this because we have one result. This session is about 5 ways to boost your Scrum. If you want to connect with me, you can do that on different locations, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. I even have a TikTok account, and you can find us or me on Instagram. The idea of this session is that it's interactive, so please feel free to unmute yourself and to take part in this talk, because it will not be only me talking. That would be so boring. And it will also require you to do some thinking and talking. So welcome everybody. This is me. Annabelle already gave a great introduction, so I'm not going to repeat that. Let's just dive into the content. So I'm wondering if you want to put in the chat your experience with Scrum. So is it 0 to 2 years, 2 to 5 years, or 5 to 10 years, or even more? So please write that in the chat. If you can do that for me. Great, and I see some new participants entering, so I'm sorry, we've already started. The first question I asked is if you want to put in the chat your experience with Scrum, just to get an idea of how deep we need to go into the Scrum and how fast we can go. Annabelle? Oh, I just saw your camera turning on. I thought you might want to add something.
Oh, no.
Okay, great. So I see 0 to 2 years. Do we have anybody who has more experience in Scrum? Maybe of the new people who were joining? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, so we see 0 to 2 years. Yes, thank you for adding that. So I know I have a little bit of an idea of where we should go. And for me, it would be more than 10 years. So I have experience in Agile for more than 10 years, starting at Ascent, which is an energy company. And for the new people joining, we started already. First question was to put in the chat your experience with Scrum. So if you're just joining in, that was the first question. We have a few of 0 to 2 years. And don't worry, you did not miss anything of the content yet. So don't worry if you were late. I'm happy that you're here. One question I do want to ask, if you can put on your camera, because then I will not only be talking to myself or my own video, but also to you, and that's what I like to see, who you are. So if you are able to, please put on your video, and if you are willing to, of course, because I'm not going to force you, but it's good to talk at people instead of pictures. Thank you, Annabelle. Great. So talking about Scrum and how to boost your Scrum, it helps to get a little bit of the background behind it. And I always use this in the training. So this is a picture that comes from a Professional Scrum Foundation training, and it shows you the difference between Scrum, which is the green line, and the red line, which is waterfall. And this is also really eye-opening to most people to say, okay, what about visibility? In the Scrum environment, we see that the visibility is a lot higher than in a traditional way of working, where we see that you are very visible at the beginning of a project or a product, but when you start working on it, you're not visible at all. You start designing, you start building, and then at the end of that product or at the end of that process, you come into the air again, or you come above water again. And in the Scrum environment, we say you are very visible, because after every sprint, you are checking if you're doing the right thing with your stakeholders, and if you need to continue or that you need to adjust. So that's what this first graph is about. Let's take a look at the second one. So the ability to change. So if you are working in a traditional waterfall way, you probably have a set of requirements that you need to finish. Could be even up to 800 requirements. I have seen that happen in traditional project-driven environments. And if you have started with that project, it is a lot more difficult to change if a client or a guest or a customer thinks about, okay, but I need this, or I need this improvement. So it's very hard to change. So the ability to change in a Scrum environment, well, you have the ability to change constantly. Every sprint, you are inspecting and adapting the results. So if anything goes wrong, or if anything is different than what the stakeholders have expected, you can change oftenly. So that is another big difference between Scrum and Waterfall. Let's take a look at the next one, which is about business value. So in the Scrum environment, if you are working with Scrum, then you see that the business value could already start working, that you're already delivering business value from the start. And how is that possible? Because every sprint you want to deliver some functionality to your stakeholders. So you're already maybe in the first phases of your project or your product delivering business value. In the waterfall environment, you only have that at the end. So you are delivering, but at the end, boom, you have that business value that is requested by your client. And then the next one, which is about risk. Well, we try in the Scrum environment, we try to eliminate risk as soon as possible. So by maybe picking up the most difficult items first and finish that or finish those. In a waterfall environment, you will only have to wait until you have decreased the risk until the end of your project or your product. So these are really nice visualizations to indicate what the difference is between the Scrum way of working and the waterfall way of working. Well, since you all have experience with Scrum, I probably, or I assume that you already have experienced these advantages. So if we look what Scrum really is about, well, it is about, the sole purpose is about delivering done increments, right? Delivering done stuff at the end of every sprint, delivering done increments, delivering usable increments that can be used by your clients, your guests, your stakeholders, whatever you are building. These done increments are delivered by self-managing teams, self-managing Scrum teams, where we say these teams are responsible for the why, the what, and the how. So we want them without any external push or external lead. We want them to be self-managing and to take the responsibility of their own choices. We are using empiricism to check if we are on the right way. So empiricism has 3 pillars: transparency, inspect, and adapt. And how we do that? Well, we are using the Scrum framework and using the Scrum values. Scrum framework is the image on the right, and the Scrum values, we will get to that in a moment. So we now have three more results in the Mentimeter. So I will read them out because it's a low number of entries. So it's low motivation, not practicing time boxing, and members new to Scrum team. So these things could mess up your Scrum. And the question is, well, but what can I do about this? And if you have specific questions about one of these things, we will get to that at the end. So there will be time for questions after the session, so you can always ask questions about that. But let's now look at how to boost your Scrum, because that's what this session is about, right? 5 ways to boost your Scrum. And the first one is, well, we are using Scrum or the Scrum framework, and it consists of these elements. And we say 3-5-3 because it has 3 accountabilities, 5 events, and 3 artifacts. And in this case, we say, well, if you see Scrum as a game, then these are the playing rules. And those playing rules are the same for all teams that are using Scrum. And it becomes more complex or more complicated if you are adjusting these Scrum rules or these playing rules, right? So in soccer, we have these certain rules, and no matter if you are just starting like a 4-year-old on a football field or a soccer field, or you're in the Premier League, the rules are still the same. Well, they differ a bit because, well, the 4-year-olds don't have all the rules, of course, but you get the idea. The most of the rules are the same. And if you are in a professional soccer match and you're just saying, okay, well, just let's skip the offside rules, or, well, just say that you can use your hands now from now on, that will make it very complicated or complex for all the people playing. That's the same with Scrum. So in Scrum, we have these rules, and of course, you can use the Scrum framework and interpret the rules or play by your own tactics or your own strategies, but the basic game rules are for everybody. So if you have missed the beginning of this session, there was a remark to grab sticky notes or to grab some paper to write some stuff down, because I'm going to ask you to write a few things down, which we will use in a later stage. So now is the moment, if you have not done so, to grab a paper and to write on that paper 353. So just grab a paper and write down 353. And if you know where the 353 stands for, add that to your paper. So I'll give you a few seconds. Maybe if you have not grabbed some paper, you can do that now. So write down 353. And if you also know what the 353 stands for, just add that to your paper. So I'll give you a few seconds for that. Give you some time for that. Also, if you missed the beginning, I said it was going to be an interactive session. So it's not going to be me talking for the next hour. It will also be you to do some thinking. So 353. If you have not written that down, then you can use this. We have 3 accountabilities, 5 events, and 3 artifacts. So that will be your first paper or your first sticky note, which has 353 on it. So if you add these up, then you have 11 elements of Scrum. And we say if you want to do Scrum well, you should use these playing rules or these game rules. If you are adjusting these, then you're probably not getting the most value out of the Scrum or out of the Scrum that you're using. What is also interesting is that if you are using Scrum and you are adjusting it along the way, well, maybe you are not fully using Scrum, but you are using fake Scrum, or you're using Scrum bots, or even we call it zombie Scrum. You are not getting the most value out of Scrum, and it looks like Scrum, but it does not have the beating heart of Scrum. So that is what we call zombie Scrum. It's also, if you're not using the values, it could also be that you're not getting the full potential out of your Scrum. So just play by the rules. How you do that, so your own strategy and tactics, that's up to you. So in the most recent version of the Scrum Guide, you see that it has become less prescriptive. So it does not really tell you how you should do stuff, but it tells you what you need to do. So these are things that you need to do if you want to get the most value out of your Scrum. Well, there's another way to boost your Scrum, and that is to unleash your Scrum Masters. So if you are a Scrum Master and you're working in an environment where you are just the scribe for the team, or you're just the admin of the team, probably as a Scrum Master, that's not the most nice job to have. But the Scrum Master role is far more than that. So it's also about how to get your people, or how to get your team from a mediocre team to a high-performing team. And how you do that, well, that again is up to you. But you can look into ways where you can stimulate collaboration or innovation and help that team really to go into a high-performing state. So you're not just the admin or the secretary or the coffee clerk, or, well, you're even not the Scrum police. That's not the things that we want our Scrum Masters to be. We want our Scrum Masters to be teachers, mentors, facilitators, and trainers. And as a Scrum Master, you're also expected to be the change agent within your organization. So you should also find out, or you should also try to look more into, how can I help this organization to work better with Scrum? Because that's actually one of the things that we expect you to do as a change agent. So unleashing your Scrum Master. So here's the second question, and I want you to write it down on a separate sticky note or a separate paper, and I want you to think about why is the role of the Scrum Master so important? So I've just given you some nudges, so you might have an idea. So write that on a second sticky note, write down the number 2, and answer the question, why is the Scrum Master role or accountability so important? I again will give you 30 seconds for that. So think about that. Why is it important? And if anybody wants to turn on their camera, I would be happy to look at your faces instead of pictures. So that's a way to boost your Zoom meeting, right? To put on your camera would be great. Okay, so that's 30 seconds. I hope you have written down an idea about why the Scrum Master role is so important. And for me, these are the reasons why a Scrum Master role is so important. Well, you support in managing the Scrum process. So one of the tasks that you have to do as a Scrum Master is to make sure that the Scrum process is followed. So you're manager of the Scrum process, you could say that. Also, you try to, through continuous improvement, to help your Scrum team to get better and better. So you have experience in Scrum, so you also have experienced the sprint retrospective. Let's say that you have sprints of 2 weeks. Well, then you have 26 times a year to improve your team, or to improve how they are collaborating, or how they are working together, how they are developing. So as a Scrum Master, you can support them in that. And I also said that, well, you are not the secretary of the team. You're not the holiday planning registration person. You're even not the admin of Jira or Azure DevOps, creating burn-down charts and that kind of stuff. You're also not the Scrum police. So you're not saying, well, this is wrong because it's not in the Scrum guide. Please try to find ways where you can improve on that. So you're not just saying, okay, this is wrong because it's not in the Scrum guide. You're trying to find out why they're using it, or why they're having challenges with that. So you're not just a Scrum Master. You're not just a Scrum police saying, okay, this is wrong because it's not Scrum. Also, what Scrum Guide does not say that a Scrum Master role is a full-time job. But I think if you want to do it well, then you don't see it as a side job. So it's not something that you do on the side. It's really something like a full-time role where you can experiment with stuff, and where you can try out, okay, this is working, this is not working. And I see some great remarks in the chat also. So I'm just going to find out what you've written. Scrum Master role is important because he or she has to facilitate planning, provide guidance, and remove impediments. Yes, that is what we do as Scrum Master, but it's so much more. It's also about the people role. So the next answer in the chat is: the Scrum Master helps product owners understand and adhere to Scrum techniques and practices. Yeah, so you are also supporting your product owner with maybe estimation techniques, or how you can order the product backlog better. So that is also part of the Scrum Master role. And then we have Rachel says the Scrum Master role is important because he or she has to facilitate. Oh, that was the same. Sorry, that was the same answer. So it's not only facilitating Scrum events, but it's also facilitating teamwork. It's also facilitating communication. And I think that makes the role far more interesting than you just being the head of a meeting. And the last thing which is on the slide is you're not only a team coach, but an Agile coach. In a lot of organizations, we see a Scrum Master, then we have a Scrum coach maybe, and then we have an Agile coach. But the way the Scrum Master role was intended is that you as a Scrum Master are also the Agile coach. You also look into the organization where Agile working or Scrum way of working can help you to get better or to help you to get more usable results. So unleash your Scrum Master. That's the second way to boost your Scrum. Then we have the third one, and that is practice level 5 leadership. So this goes into the leaders that are surrounding us. Level 5 leaders, they gather the right people around them, and they are not the one that are the egocentric, how do you call that? The egocentric, the people that say, okay, look at me, I really brought this organization or I really brought this team to life and I'm so successful. So that is not level 5 leadership. There was a research done by Jim Collins a time ago, and I let me see if you can see this. The book From Good to Great is a very interesting read if you want to know more about what drives an organization. How do we get from a good organization to a great organization? And that those organizations that were great, they had a resemblance in their leadership. And they have identified 5 levels of leadership that might help you to understand, okay, what type of leader am I currently encountering? And if you want to boost your Scrum, it is good to have a leader that supports you. It's good to have a leader that is open for feedback and that will take your advice and do something with that. So there are 5 levels of leadership, and I will not go into them all because, well, Jim Collins has written a great book about that. But the interesting thing about 5-level leadership or level 5 leadership is that it is a combination between professional will and personal humility. So it is okay to be ambitious as a leader, but it's also good to be humble. And I know we see a lot of leaders that don't have that behavior already, but you can help them to get there and to become a level 5 leader. So this one, the next exercise is number 3. So if you're writing along, please write a 3 on your paper and think about what type of leader or what level of leader are you currently encountering in your organization or in your team or as your manager. So think about someone close to you and think about what level of leadership do you see. And that will be number 3. So think about that. And again, I will give you 30 seconds to read through the 5 levels and to think about your own leader in your own environment. So that was number 3. So if you have in your environment a leader which is not on level 5 yet, you can help him or her to get to a level higher. Level 5 leaders have gone through all these other levels. So a level 5 includes level 4, 3, 2, and 1. And the way this works is that you can always have a leader which is maybe on level 1 or 2, and how can you get them to a level higher? By giving them feedback. And feedback is not talking behind their backs at the coffee machine, but it's giving them feedback. So try to support your leaders so you can become more high performing, and that you create an environment where people can flourish. The fourth thing that you can do to boost your Scrum is to think about the Scrum values. And sometimes people think, okay, the Scrum values, they're kind of fluffy and I don't know what they really mean. So they're on the screen right now. So you see focus, openness, commitment, courage, and respect. And the way I remember them all is like the abbreviation FOCR. So FOCR is focus, openness, commitment, courage, and respect, just in the order that they are here. And if you are using Scrum or the Scrum framework without paying attention to the Scrum values, then you could be doing zombie Scrum. You're just using the framework, you're just using the tools without having any attention for the Scrum values. And these values are so important because they are seen as the lifeblood of Scrum. And like I said earlier, if you're not using the values or you are not living through these values, it could be that you're doing zombie Scrum. It looks like Scrum from the outside, but it does not have the beating heart of Scrum, like these 5 values. And still they remain a bit fluffy for everybody and for some people, and they say, I don't know what to do with this. So the fourth exercise is to think about what is the anti-value of this Scrum value. So what is the opposite of having focus? So that will be the fourth exercise that I'm going to ask from you to write down. What is an anti-value for focus? What is an anti-value for openness? And because it's 5 values, I'm going to give you 2 minutes for that. So please think about what is the Scrum value and what is the anti-value of that Scrum value. So I'll start the timer for 2 minutes. Please write it down on your 4th sticky note or your 4th paper or whatever you're using to write on. And I will shush for 2 minutes. Hush. So you still have 1 minute? Okay, so that was 2 minutes. So it helps if you think about the anti-value, because if you know the anti-value, then you can probably easier do something about it. So let's check out what we can do with it. So if you want to improve on using the Scrum values, it's good if you learn to live by the Scrum values. But that's easier said than done, right? As a Scrum Master, or if you are in the Scrum environment or an Agile Coach or whatever, what we try to do is first try to influence behavior. Because those small behavioral things, they grow into habits. And those habits, they grow into a culture or a mindset. So it's good that you sometimes nudge the team to say, okay, I think we've lost some focus here. Or are we still being open to each other? Or how can we improve that? So a few of examples to live more by the Scrum values is to discuss them during sprint retrospective. What I always do is to start, when I start with a new Scrum team, is to discuss them at the start of the Scrum team. So, because the Scrum values mean something different to everybody, right? So it's good to have a team that has the same notion of the Scrum values. So it's good to discuss them there, and it's also good to discuss them during sprint retrospective. What you can also do is have a sprint focused on one of these values. So make it very explicit. And say, okay, this sprint, we're going to focus on commitments. And what does that mean? Okay, we're committed to deliver high quality software or to deliver high quality product. We are committed to the team to address challenges that we have. So you can have a sprint really focused on one of these values and refer to them oftenly. So if you are in a team or in a Scrum team that has been around for like or has been together for a few months, it's good to remind them of, okay, when we started, these were what we understood of the Scrum values. Are we still working by them? So I hope that makes it a little bit more tangible for you what these 5 Scrum values mean. Another way to boost your Scrum is to use your brains, actually. And using your brains is meant to involve everybody into what you're doing. So it's not, if you're doing a sprint retrospective and someone, the person with loudest voice always speaks, well, then you have something to do. Then you want to maybe look into structures or formats that you can use to make your sprint retrospective even more involving and engaging. So that is using your brains. And using your brains, you can do that in a lot of ways. For instance, by making the meetings or the Scrum events more interesting, to involve and engage everybody during those Scrum events. And how can you do that? Well, you can look into the 6 trumps of Sharon Bowman, for instance, and what Sharon Bowman says, okay, if you're doing a meeting or if you're doing a training, these are things that work. And those things that work, those are based on brain science. So she has really she dove into brain science, and she has created 6 trumps. I will get to in a moment. What you could also do is to use liberating structures. And I'm curious if anybody has used liberating structures. I will explain in a moment what they are. So if you want to boost your events, try to think of these 6 trumps. And a trump means that something is better than the other. So for instance, images trumps words. People are better able to remind images or to understand images than just words. So try to use in your events or in your presentations or whatever you're doing, try to use more images. That will work better for your brain. Then for instance, writing trumps reading. If you are studying or if you are doing a training, it helps if you write things down, because then you are using your brain in multiple ways. You have to think about what you're writing down, and you have to process that information in your brain before you write it down. And that processing in your brain already makes your brain more acquainted with that information. Another one is shorter trumps longer. And shorter trumps longer means that don't do like 2-hour sessions. Make them shorter. What I've done with the backlog refinement, the product backlog refinement, for instance, we used to have like a 2-hour meeting where we discussed all the product backlog items that need to be refined. But of course, people were weary and they thought it was boring. So they, so they kind of, their brain turned off. After 10 minutes, your brain turns down. It goes into a kind of hibernating state. And if nothing changes, then your brain stays in that state. So try to do shorter meetings, shorter events, shorter training, shorter presentations to keep your brain involved. Question to you, do you recognize any of these trumps in this session? There's one thing that we have not addressed, and that's movement from sitting. So what I'm going to do is ask you to get up, stand up, and do some stretching. So make yourself wide or just have some movement within your body. And it might seem strange, but since we are already 42 minutes into the talk, I can imagine that your brain has turned off. And while if you are moving, then oxygen gets to your brain and it will help you to focus on the presentation for the next few minutes. So movement from sitting. Make sure, because when you're moving, then you get oxygen to your brain, and that gives your brain a boost. So if you have not tried that, please do that. Get up off your chair and just move around a bit to get that oxygen to your brain, to get that blood flowing. I also promised you to say a little bit about liberating structures. And liberating structures, well, they are used to move away from boring presentations, managed discussions, open discussions, status reports, and brainstorm sessions. And there are 33 or maybe even more structures that you can use to make those meetings better. I'm not going to discuss them all 33 because, they are very well explained on their website. So they also have a book. I have it here. It's called The Surprising Power of Liberating Structures. So if you want, yes, like this. And these are ways that you can use to make, for instance, your daily Scrum more interesting and more involved for everybody. So, for instance, in your daily Scrum, you can use a 1, 2, 4 all. So instead of going through that circle, which we usually have, you could use 1, 2, 4 all. It goes like this. So the first minute you get a minute to think about, okay, what was the progress that I've made towards the sprint goal? You have 1 minute individually. Then you do that in pairs and have 2 minutes to discuss that with each other. Then you do that with groups of 4, and after that you will do it all together. And you will notice that people who are maybe more introverts, they speak more easy if they are in pairs or if they are with a group of 4. So that way you can involve and engage everybody in that daily Scrum instead of people having to wait until all the other 8 team members have gone and then you go. For the sprint retrospective, you can use the eco-cycle planning. Just dive into that. There's an excellent description of that. It is mainly about what should we focus on, what should we give more attention, and what is actually something that we should not give any attention anymore. So what is something that we could leave out, which does not give us value. For the sprint review, for instance, you can use the shift and share. Usually the sprint review goes like, okay, this is a presentation. We have made this and this. Dear stakeholders, what do you think of it? Are there any questions? And then the sprint review is over. But the way the sprint review is intended is that it is a collaboration between the stakeholders and the Scrum team. A a way that you could support that is to use a shift and share. So for instance, when we were in the physical environment, we did not do a 1 hour presentation. We said, okay, we're going to make 4 stations. So there's one, let's say it's a table with a laptop on it, and one station you talk about the product backlog, things that are happening in the market that might impact your product backlog. The other station is about the increment that you have delivered. The other station is about what went well in the sprint. You discussed that also with your stakeholders, because you can imagine if you have 4 people sick out of the team, that's something that you want to share. And then you have another station, the fourth station, maybe talk about innovation. What are innovative ideas from the stakeholders? And then you give them 10 minutes to be present at one of the stations, and then you move, after those 10 minutes, you move the stakeholders to a next station or a next breakout room if you are in an online environment. And in this way, everybody gets a chance to look at what you're presenting and also to give feedback, right? So it's not only the hippo in the room talking, the highest paid person, the hippo, but it gives everybody a chance to contribute. And for the sprint planning, you can use the celebrity interview, where you really dive into, okay, dear product owner, what is your vision for this sprint? What do you think will deliver value? And can you explain that a little bit more? So you're just like interviewing the product owner. Well, these ways, using brain science and using liberating structure, perfectly combine and can make your Scrum events even better. So for the 5th exercise, I want you to make a simple drawing of a brain on the paper and give it a number 5. So a simple drawing of a brain. I will give you 30 seconds for that. To make a simple drawing of a brain. And that's 30 seconds. This is my simple drawing of a brain. I don't know if you can see that because it's, yeah. Here's my brain. That looks really good. It is a simple drawing of a brain. So now we have 5 sticky notes, or you have 5 items written down. And I want you to take a look at those sticky notes or at that paper. So it's 1 to 5. If we would do this in the physical environment, I would have these cards for everybody. So yeah, too bad we cannot do that. But I hope you have written down some stuff on your papers. Question to you is, which solution do you want to experiment or try to boost your Scrum? Take that. Sorry, I was just distracted by the chat. Thank you, Maru, and I think the recording will be shared. So thank you for joining. So think about what is your smallest next steps that you could take for improving your Scrum, and write that small step onto a single paper or maybe on a single sticky note. So what is a small thing? Look at your 5 cards or your 5 papers. And I will give you 1 minute to do so. So what is a small step that you could take? You have 1 minute. Good, so that's 1 minute. I hope you have identified a small step that you want to take. This is also a liberating structure called 15% solutions. So instead of thinking about a huge action plan and to take into account all these 5 ways to boost your Scrum, the question is, what is a small step that you can take? Well, I have identified a few small steps that you can take. For instance, for the 353, the number 1 is read the Scrum Guide. Play by the rules. As you might know, the new version of the Scrum Guide has just been released in November of last year, so it might be that there are some changes in that. A next one, unleash your Scrum Master. Empower the Scrum Master with time and accountabilities. So if you have like a secretary Scrum Master, or if you are a secretary Scrum Master, try to see what you can do within the range of your, within the boundaries that might give you that extra value to boost your Scrum. Level 5 leadership. What is a small step that you can do? Well, you can start giving feedback to your leaders to get them into that level 5 or maybe a level higher of leadership. Help them create a vision, for instance, or help them create followers or people who are really into the things that you're doing. That could help. Scrum Values. Remind your team members of the Scrum Values during sprint retrospective. So that's a real small step that you could do, and use your brain. Experiment with one liberating structure during one of your Scrum events. So again, it's not about making a whole action plan. It's about taking small steps. Start small, succeed big. And that can help you to boost your Scrum. And that brings us to the last part. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Evelien. That was very lovely. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Any questions? I'm just checking out the chat or the Q&A. We have no questions there. Just looking at the chat if there's questions. I don't think so. Yes, Elizabeth.
Hello, Evelien.
Go ahead. I heard someone unmute. Yes.
Yeah, that was a nice experience. Yeah. I'd like to know what should be the mindset of someone who wants to become a Scrum Master. What are the values that you should hold before you even decide?
I think the most important thing about being a Scrum Master is that you like to work with people. And this is a misconception about the Scrum Master role that we see a lot, that it's about the tools or the events or the framework, but it's so much more than that. It's really about, can I get this team to be a better team? So it's really about diving into, okay, if you start a new team, what is happening there? Or if there's a conflict, how am I going to support my team with that? And if you don't know that already, then it's something that you can learn, of course, but that will help. So having the intention of working, or that you like to work with people, I think that is one of the most important things for a Scrum Master to do. Does that answer your question enough, Echo, or are you looking for more?
Yeah. That was great. Thank you.
Great. And I saw another question of Elizabeth, or a raised hand by Elizabeth. I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment.
Hello, Evelien.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for a great session. I want to know, in terms of Scrum and being a leader, how do you draw the line between being very liberal at the same time being strict, and so as to get your your workers or your team to take you seriously in terms of anything you do?
Yeah, so I think one of the things is that you want to make sure that everybody has the same starting point. So let's say like the 3-5-3, that is a great starting point. We have the Scrum framework, this is how it works, and we're going to try if it also works for us, right? So, but it's not about saying, okay, you're doing a daily Scrum for 20 minutes. That's so wrong because you have to do it in 15. It is about, okay, we are doing our daily Scrum. It takes us 20 minutes. What can we improve? And so you're always, instead of giving directions, you're always asking questions. And with asking questions, you will get your team more into thinking about, okay, how can I improve this? And it's not about you telling them as a Scrum Master how they should do it. It's more about having them think about it themselves. See, if you are always, if they have like obstacles or impediments, and as a Scrum Master, you are expected to solve those impediments, right? But it's not that you have to fix them all. As a Scrum Master, we expect you to fix the items that they cannot fix themselves. So first question as a Scrum Master you should always ask is, what have you done yourself to solve it? And if they say, okay, well, I have not tried anything, well, then it's up to them to first figure out if they can solve it themselves, because else they will never be able to solve it. If you always keep taking that away, they will never be able to solve it. And as a Scrum Master, you are facilitating. So you are asking questions. And one thing I always tell in the training, Scrum Master training, is reveal, not resolve. So you are, as a Scrum Master, you are not the one solving all the stuff. You are signaling, you are revealing stuff, but the team has to solve it themselves because we want the team to be self-managing. So that is, and it's a balance. Okay, so you always have to figure out, okay, if I'm going to do this, will they learn from it, or will they just miserably fail and will get fired? Because that's, of course, not what you want. You do want to support and you do want to help them. So it's something that you have to balance. But I would say if you have a new starting team, then you probably be more into setting boundaries and making sure that they understand Scrum. But if you have a more mature team, which is like working for maybe 1-2 years together, then they probably have experienced that self-managing. Then they're probably better at self-managing, because self-managing doesn't happen overnight, right? It's not something that if you start a team that you can say, okay, from now on you are self-organizing or self-managing. It's something that you have as a Scrum Master, you have to help them with. Is that enough for you, Elizabeth?
No, this is Jemima.
Oh, Jemima, sorry.
That's enough. Thank you so much.
Great.
Do we have any other question? Okay, so I don't think there's any other question.
No.
Thank you, Evelien. I hope after this session, we are all going to improve on our Scrum. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Great.
For this presentation. Mm-hmm. Rachel has a question. Rachel? Okay.
Nope. Okay. Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining. I see a lot of people have joined, and I hope that you can get one small item, one 15% solution out of it to boost your Scrum. And I'm not the expert in all these things. I just facilitating you to identify your own improvement. So thank you for joining, and I hope you get something out of it.
Okay, so this brings us to the end of this session. Have a nice day, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Evelien.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was interesting.
Great. Thank you, Eiko.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dennis. Isabel, are you still on? Isabel?
Yeah, I think she's offline.
Yeah, I'm still on.
Oh, okay. Will you stay on for a few minutes?
Yeah, sure.
So I saw the remark about the recordings or the question about the recording. So I assume that will be done. Shall I also send PowerPoint slides to somebody?
Yeah, so Evelyn, I think you can drop your PowerPoint presentation. We have the emails of the participants, so we can share it to them, as well as the video itself, the links to the video.
Yeah. Okay. Very well. Well, thank you all for organizing this, and I was happy to be part of it. I saw more people joining after, like, I don't know, maybe half an hour or something, but I think we had a nice group at the end. It was 24 people.
26.
Great. So I hope that they have gotten something out of it. It's a pity that I could not see any cameras on or see the people. I always like to talk at people. But no worries. This is okay. I hope. Yeah.
Ebe, let's see you.
Sorry.
I asked one guy to turn on his camera so he can interact with you.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. As long as people got something out of it, then I'm perfectly happy.
Oh, okay.
How did you think it went, Isabel?
Annabelle, it went well.
Annabelle, sorry, I keep calling you Isabel. Sorry for that. Annabelle.
No worries.
I could also just call you Akaditi Global if I want, right? That's your name on Zoom.
Sure.
That's easy.
I'd like to go off. My screen is messing up. I want to restart my. Yeah.
Okay, well, you do that, and thank you all for joining who's still here, and hope to see you maybe next year in Ghana in real life. And I can meet you in real life.
We'll be glad to see you too.
Yeah. And then nobody can have their video off because I can see all the people. Yay!
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you so much, and have a nice day.
Thank you too.
Have a
Enjoy
nice
the
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.